You don't look like a whistler to me.
She can't, but then one of them is a true, so she can do. So can she do? What can she do?
She can whistle.
I think
She can whistle, right?
What was the first one? Swim. I think you can swim.
Actually, no, whistling is hard. Whistling is very difficult.
So I don't think you are.
You can
But I
swim.
don't know now.
Which one is
The swimming one?
Swim.
Really?
Yeah.
You can't swim?
You can swim. No,
Well,
she
she
can
can.
swim.
You
can't swim.
That was the
Oh,
lie.
lie. Sorry.
Oh, wait, I'm so
So
confused.
she can't ride a bike?
Oh,
Or
it was
she
So I
negative,
don't
negative.
know how to ride a bike.
So it's negative,
Yeah,
negative,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know how to
Negative.
whistle.
That was a tricky one.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
It's hard, actually.
Daddy, we're gonna
That
crush
was
that for
hard.
you.
Yeah.
You should know. Sorry. My brain went. I know. That's why my brain was like,
It's called
oh.
double negative.
Yeah, exactly. It was like,
Double
yeah.
negative.
Swim?
It's double negative, yeah.
Like you should take a job.
My name is Malak. I've been to Saudi Arabia, I've been to Tunisia, I've been to Australia.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I think Saudi Arabia.
You've never been to Saudi?
Given your name is Malak too, I don't think it's legal in like England.
No, it's been born there.
Australia.
Say Mark. Yeah.
Australia?
Mark was born in Australia.
Yeah?
Yeah.
My sister was born. John was
Yeah.
born.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it could have been
I
born
think
there.
so.
Which one
I
is
did
it?
Tunisia.
Australia.
Yeah, me
Australia?
too. A lot of people. And Abuna did as well.
On
Who
your
lived
bucket
in
list.
Saudi growing up?
On your list to go.
I lived in Saudi.
Yeah.
Who lived in Saudi?
Who lived in Saudi?
Everyone did. Abuna. Sorry. It's,
Abuna. Anybody else live in Saudi? I'm Kuwaiti. Yeah. How's your neighbor? On Saudi's war.
You're here too.
Okay, my name is Thomas, and
Wait, which one was, sorry, I missed which one was not true.
oh,
Which one?
Australia.
Australia.
yeah.
Sorry, Rhonda, sorry.
So, my name is Thomas, and I've taken introductory classes in Polish, Yiddish, and Hebrew. Modern Hebrew.
Gadish?
Polish,
Yiddish.
What
Polish,
is Yiddish?
Yiddish.
Isn't Yiddish?
Like a mix
Is it
of
Jewish?
German and
Yiddish is the language that is like a Jewish language
Jewish,
that they
I thought
spoke
it was
in
Jewish.
Europe. Yeah, it's a mixture of like Hebrew and bunch of
I'm
Yiddish.
Oh,
So
cool.
Polish
gonna say
then.
that one's true. You know a little bit too much about it.
But what were the
I'm
other
gonna
ones?
say
Polish? Polish and what
Yeah,
was the third
Polish
one?
is the
Polish, Yiddish, and modern Hebrew.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
gonna say
Polish.
more
Polish.
Hebrew.
Polish.
Because if you know Yiddish, you
Jadish.
know.
I think the
that's a hard one.
Jadish is
You
the
know,
line.
Your family's got Polish heritage, right?
No.
No? Yes,
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
My,
yeah.
my dad.
That's a hard one.
Oh.
Hebrew?
I'm
Okay,
the
so
Hebrew
what are the
I say Jadish is the line.
Yiddish.
Yiddish.
Yiddish?
yeah,
Maybe
okay.
Polish.
I don't know.
Because it's not Brazilian.
No,
No,
Yiddish.
Yiddish.
Yiddish. I don't know. That's a
Oh,
hard one.
Yiddish.
That's not really
Okay,
good.
well, we say
You
Yiddish.
know, we heard like someone say like.
It's actually I haven't taken anything in Polish.
In Polish?
Yeah.
Oh.
We all
So
guessed
that
it
was the
the
trick
first
because I was
time.
like, well, you have heritage in it. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, it's like
Can you
it's,
speak Polish or you can't speak
Such a
well, I know
Little.
a little bit, but I never took classes.
Polish?
It's like, yeah, it's really hard in Toronto. There's like it's not offered. So
No way,
Yeah,
really?
I looked
Like,
into
There's
it.
tons
And
of
it's
Polish
like,
people here, though. That's so
yeah. There's some in like Mississauga, but I've looked around for classes here, and then like I took it like just a introductory class in Hebrew, and they're teaching Yiddish at the same place. So I'm like, okay, why not? There's some Polish in there too, like
Oh, is
grandma
there?
and grandfather. It's like the same words and stuff. So
Okay.
yeah, okay, well that's good.
I would never guess that.
Cool.
So now we all know a little bit more about each other. We should do this every week. Remind me if I forget. I'm so sorry I didn't do it last week.
Just no double negatives. If we do.
It's double negative. That's very smart. Yeah.
Okay, so this week we are talking about sharpening our leadership. So Daniel's gonna get us started.
Should we have a quick summary because there's a
Yeah,
few
yeah,
new
okay,
cases
yeah, that's
of
right,
what
yeah,
happened
that's
last
right,
week?
yeah.
If someone would want to
Who was
share,
away last week?
yeah.
I'm kidding, I'm teasing. Yeah,
Here you go. Here you
I
go.
brought some out.
Oh, there's plenty
Where
over
did-
there.
So yeah, who remembers like just tidbits from last week? Does anyone remember the topic of last week? It was
mission statement.
mission
Yeah,
statement,
vision.
yeah, vision. Yeah, so we were talking about clarifying your purpose last week, and that included mission and vision of our active small group. So, like if you
God first.
keeping God first, yeah. Yeah, how would you summarize the whole thing in one sentence or two?
Extra.
Anybody? able to.
Can you give that to Mark?
So, what was the question?
How could you summarize last week's session, like in 1 or 2 sentences? Like putting God first or another.
It was trying to help us to identify like why we're doing it, just to put the mission statement of why we're attending this leadership course, and we can change our mission eventually.
Yeah, like each group will have its own flavor. Is something we touched upon, but like a group has to have a flavor of some sort. It has to be going somewhere. It's not like kind of wishy-washy going nowhere. Like there's a beginning and an end, and it has a purpose. Each group.
Values list.
And the values of your group, like confidentiality, has to be important in your group. And each group's gonna have its own individual character, but it's like things that will apply to all of the groups.
And Mary did a good job of like printing out handouts to help us write a mission statement to identify values, and then the intention was that it's work in progress, so you kind of tweak it accordingly. And then one of the takeaways that I took from last week, because it was a phenomenon for me, seeing in this perspective that Jesus had his own small group, and he was a leader, right? I never thought about it like that. It's just he had 12 disciples, but that was his small group. So even though he would attend and do whatever, he also had a small group. So that was like pretty cool for me. Yeah. Okay. So today's discussion is like leadership or sharpening your leadership skills. So from the get-go, there's 2 types of leadership. There's leading from the front and leading from like in the back scenes, right? So not necessarily saying one is better than the other, or to exercise one type of leadership, but we would, I think, encourage leadership leading from like the background, right? Not leading necessarily from the front. Someone who's dominant, always talking, for example, not giving people opportunity to speak, just like strong with the vision and just like hammers it to people. This is more of a facilitation, service, someone who leads, just like almost like parenting, I'm assuming, where you would always kind of lead and doing things and always preparing to serve and help out. So 2 kind of main themes we'll talk about for like a couple of minutes. So appropriate motives for a leadership. What do you guys think they are? So the intention of us being here is to eventually be leaders of a small group, right? I mean, it's not necessarily for everyone, as a FYI, right? But this is a session to exercise that and to identify if I qualify or if I want to pursue a leadership for a small group, right? That's why we're here. So what do we think appropriate motives are for a leader?
Leading by example.
Great. Leading by example.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
So say for instance you want to be a leader. What is your motivation? Right? But now we're talking about not just the negative motivation, we're talking about appropriate motives that should be the leadership's
Like what's motivating me to want to lead a small group?
correct. So Andrew said leading by example.
Presenting God's will or God's values.
Okay, yeah.
Giving space to others to listen and to talk what they have in their hearts.
But would that motivate you? Is that why you would lead?
To listen to what they have to say.
So okay. So motivating you would be listening. So we got listening, leading by example, and presenting God's value. Okay.
I was gonna say maybe it's your gift and that's how you serve God.
Okay. So exercising your gift.
Learning would also motivate me.
Okay.
Like knowing that people are going through the same sort of situation or have the same questions or facing the same struggles as I am would motivate me to want to.
So that's 2 things here. You're learning during the process of leading, and you're kind of leading by giving your experience or past experience to others as well.
Just really specifically, I'm just in a situation where there's some people that want to get a small group together, but it just never seems to go anywhere, and I just feel like I maybe should like take initiative to start a specific one, because it seems like there's an appetite for it, but I don't necessarily like want to be the leader per se, but I just feel like maybe I should do it because in the specific situation, like there's a need for it. So I don't know, it's a really practical kind
Like
of thing.
step
like,
up.
Yeah,
See a gap
that's
and you want to be
that's
able to
kinda-
fill it.
That's kind of where that's kind of where it is. Where it's just a really I see a need in a certain specific situation. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like what I'm trying to figure out. Yeah.
Nice.
So for me, I think a motivation would be to be able to create a space where people can grow in their spiritual life.
So that would motivate you to see them grow.
Yeah, and being able to create that space and that environment where they can grow. So it serves as like a platform.
Yep. Cool. So everything we said here is like above and beyond what was discussed in the book. So I'm just gonna quickly call them out, and then we're gonna like probably deep dive into two. So the book here calls out serving Christ should be your motivation, right? It should, like, this is not just rule of thumb, right? Like a lot of the things that you guys said are also of value, right? So serving Christ, bearing fruit in your life, shepherding others, so like watching out for others, being example of Christ, and using your gifts that God has given you to exercise them. So we're just gonna deep dive into two of them, and that one is like serve Christ. So if we can just open up Colossians 3:23 to 24. So who can read that for us? Can you get it ready? 3:23. Sorry, 3 verse 23 to 24. So keep it in mind, as we read this, the motivation for being a leader is serving Christ. Sorry, we don't understand baby Bible.
So I can read that.
Yeah, sure. And does everyone have it open? Let's just make sure. So we'll just, Dina, is that your Bible?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just wait for Dina to open it. And then
What's the first?
Colossians, chapter 3, verse 23 to 24.
Sure. And whatever you do, do it heartily, as to the Lord and not to man, to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ.
So everything that we do, like, it's not just for even like leading this small group. Like when I was reading this should apply in my whole Christian walk, right? Everything we should do it wholeheartedly, knowing we're working for the Lord. So I'm a complete hypocrite when it comes to this at work, but I'm not working for my manager, whatever his name is. It's like as if I'm doing this for Christ. So when we do this and we do it wholeheartedly, we go above and beyond, right? So that's why it's really important. In addition to what we discussed, whether it's listening, using it by example, using our gifts, the biblical, seeing people grow, ultimately serving Christ and doing it wholeheartedly is very important in a leadership role. The other second one is I think it was the example. Oh, yeah. So, communicating the message of reconciliation. Sorry, so that was another thing that here they gave as an example that motivates. So, in addition to what we discussed, we have serve Christ, bear fruit in your life, keep a watch over others, that would motivate you. Being an example to the body, so living by example, that should motivate you to lead a group. Using your gifts, that might be one of the components that motivates you. And then the other one is communicate the message of reconciliation. Right? So who can read 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 19 to 21.
What's the verse?
Verse 19 to 21. So the motivation for leadership here is to communicate the message of reconciliation.
2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians, yeah.
Chapter 9.
Chapter 5. Andrew, do you want to read it?
That is, that God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself, not imputing their trespasses to them, and has committed to us the word of reconciliation. Now then, we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God were pleading through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. For he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in him.
Can we just read that again?
Okay. That is, that God was Christ reconciling the world to himself, not imputing the trespasses to them, and committed to us the word of reconciliation. Now then, we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God were pleading through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf to be reconciled to God. For he made him who knew no sin be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in him.
So, on a personal level, like for me personally, outside of this, if I ever ask you guys, like, oh, I'm trying to figure out what my purpose in life is, right? Or if you ever ask yourself, what is my purpose in life? And you're seeking, like, God for that, I think, or I would advise you to, like, read 2 Corinthians, right? Because our purpose from this verse is to reconcile first yourself and others to Christ. That is primarily...
Can we define reconcile? Like, what is that?
Okay, so what do you guys think? What do you guys think reconcile with Christ means? Good question.
Making us one with him again.
I mean, with Adam's sin, there was separation between God and his creation. So by Christ coming back, he just joined us back again. So reconciled through Jesus' birth, crucifixion, and resurrection.
Like the way I think of reconciling is when you make up with someone, like you were in a fight with someone and then you reconcile.
Yeah.
I would say submission to Christ.
Okay. So you yourself submit to Christ and then you help others to submit to Christ. Okay.
So in the NLT version here it says, no longer counting people's sins against them. And I think sometimes like when we think of our sins, we feel like we're so separate from God. And like making, like reconciling people, like I would imagine is like, you know, reminding us that God loves us no matter what. Like even if our sins should not be in the way of like us being one with Christ in terms of like how he looks at us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like removing all the barriers between you and God.
Sorry, say that again.
Removing all the barriers between.
Barriers between.
I mean, verse 21 as well represents significant humiliation. I mean, the Lord who just came and who knew no sin has become a sin to save us. So he's humiliated himself to save us as well.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Or we can
Yeah.
extend?
No, this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like my sense is like my parents and myself. If I distance myself with them, like I should, like you coming helping me to reconcile my parents, right? And like you said, remove any barriers, improving that relationship, but also teaching who Christ is, right, and what He did, and then joining them together. That I think that's just like a purpose-driven verse. Like if you're ever looking for a purpose in life, I think that's a good place to start. Okay. So great, yeah. I mean, great reasons that would motivate you to be a leader, right? And it's important to identify what motivates you to be a leader, because we kind of identified last week. Things may not always go the way you want, and it may not be easy. And then you might be thinking, why am I doing this? You're going to come back to identifying, okay, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to build that environment. I want to be able to listen. I want to be able to share Christ's word. I want to be able to read it. Whatever it may be, that is your motivation, you're always going to come back to that. Right? So that's why it's always very important. So we've kind of discussed a few. It's up to everyone to kind of ponder on that and find out what their motivation is for leading. So now, in the contrary, what are wrong motives that will hinder you from being a good leader?
Leading people to yourself instead of to Christ.
Ooh, good one.
Can
we even answer
it? Where it's like a good leader is, a bad leader is. You see those pictures on LinkedIn?
Where it's like someone standing on a
Yeah.
rock, like telling
Yeah.
people what to do, and the other one's like leading.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Selfishness.
Selfishness?
Selfish gain.
Selfish
Using
gain.
people, yeah.
Like an ego kind of thing, you mean?
Sure, or just using people for my own selfish benefit, not looking out for them, but rather for my own good.
Like a manipulation, you mean?
Sure, could be. Yeah.
So, Dean, what was yours again?
I said leading people to yourself instead of to Christ. So
Okay.
creating an idol out of yourself. So where people are like, I'm coming to small group because Dina said this or Dina did this, or so it's like, are you creating a following?
Like they end up liking you than the actual word.
Yeah,
Like
I
the
don't-
Bible.
Like, are people coming to like see you or to follow you or to hear what you have to say, or are you leading people to Christ? Right? So
Yeah.
are you creating your own fan base?
Yeah.
Or are you?
It's almost like who's she shining the spotlight on.
Yeah. Right.
I may add absence of vision. If I don't have vision in my service or my leadership, probably I won't lead people or my group to the right aim or right end point.
Right.
So wrong motives, guys. So we've had 3 so far. What else do you guys think could be wrong motives? Pride? Yeah.
If you have your own agenda that you want to get across through your leadership, rather than whatever the agenda would be of the group or of the word. Yeah, like you just have your own ideas that you really want to share with people.
Yeah. Your own agenda.
I love this one. Statements. Needful entertainment.
Sorry, say that again?
Diana was saying needful entertainment.
Oh.
That's social.
Oh, okay.
I
So.
just couldn't just-
Okay, sorry, I missed it.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Anything else? What do you think?
I don't have anything to do.
Yeah. Okay. No problem.
Well, this isn't maybe as obvious obvious or intentional as the own agenda, right? But I think that everybody, well, I don't know. I kind of feel like people who are drawn to Christianity have different needs, and there's a lot of different. There's a multitude of messages in the Bible and things like that that can respond to different people's needs, right? And they're all put them all together, and that's kind of like the fullness of the faith or whatever. And so sometimes you can assume that what you've responded to is what everybody else needs the same thing, right? So you might overemphasize, like, say, compassion and mercy, which is definitely very important, but some other people might need more of like the structure and, you know, that's in the Bible and discipline and things like that. That's just an example of kind of like of a polarity that's in the Bible, right? So you could assume that because of what you need or what's been helpful for you, you can kind of like subconsciously kind of project that into your presentation, right? So you know, like make it so you can give your own slant on you know what you choose as the materials, like without consciously saying like picking an agenda like a, I don't know, liberal agenda, conservative agenda, whatever, but you know, kind of.
So using your anecdotal experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Without putting or missing God's purpose.
Skewing the message.
Just making a little too specific. I don't mean it. It's not like a bad thing. I think it's just a very common thing that what you find the most important. For instance,
it's easy to do that.
Yeah, you stress those messages over others, and you might privilege them over
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. Like, and I don't think it's like you might do it on purpose, but you know, it can happen with any type of thing where you kind of and leave out other things, right? And there's all these people coming from different places with different needs, like so that can kind of happen too.
Yeah.
Something to watch
Sure.
out for.
Yeah. Green, what do you think? Wrong motivations.
To be a leader?
Yeah. In being, like, what is a motivation that is not good that a leader would have?
I think it's just, you know, glorifying yourself as saying, like, attention, like having, like, that gathering around you kind of probably a wrong reason to have to be a leader.
Yeah. True.
Just feeling that you want to preach, so have a gathering or like an audience to preach.
An audience, yes.
So just wanting an audience or following, fan base, so similar to what a lot of people say.
Yeah. So yeah, we covered actually most of all the points that were discussed here. So some that were cool, that was like self-exaltation. So like from an ego, putting yourself on a pedestal, feeling important or prestigious, right? Like, hey, I have like these people come to my house, and I didn't think about this, but a motive for being a leader that will hinder you from being a good leader is someone pressuring you in being a leader, right? That's not necessarily a good motive, being pressured or cornered to take that responsibility. And to my surprise, they called out unconfessed sins, right? I didn't know how that would be a motivation, but I could acknowledge how that could be hypocrisy, right? So I'm telling you guys one thing, and then Dina's leading something, and then she's a hypocrite, for instance, or Thomas, or vice versa, right? So if I was in a position to lead a group, and I'm telling you guys you shouldn't do X, and then behind closed doors I do X, right? So
opposite of leading by example.
Exactly.
Leading by bad example.
Yeah. But in addition to that, it's explicitly calling out it being unconfessed, right? So say, for instance, I do have a hindrance, right? I do have an issue. It doesn't necessarily mean I can't lead. Or I'll just use you, for example, Andrew. Say, for instance, you have some sins, or you're overcoming a sin, but you're actually taking action about it, right? And he's doing confession, for instance. That's okay. That's completely different from me sinning and not acknowledging it and confessing it, right? I shouldn't lead. because I'm not leading by example and I'm not taking responsibility for my own actions. While on the other hand, Andrew is in the process of reconciling himself with Christ, and he acknowledges it, is doing something about it, and has confessed, right?
So the act of confessing, like, are you talking about like sitting down with Luna and doing confession, or are you talking about recognizing your sin, repenting?
Yeah.
But like you're talking about actual confession.
I'm actually talking about explicit confession. Yeah. So the concept of hypocrisy, but the difference in the example I gave between Andrew and myself is that we all sin, right? So I don't say, oh, I sin, I shouldn't be leading, for example. No, like that means no one's gonna be leading anyone, right? So in Andrew's scenario is that, yeah, he sins, he's still doing, he's got like things that he's trying to overcome, but he's taking action about reconciling his relationship with Christ. Where in my example, I'm leading, but I'm actually dead inside, and I'm not acknowledging it, because the Bible. So here it actually says, calls out in Romans 6:16, sins must be confessed and brought under the lordship of Christ. So and there's other verses. So outstanding sin that is not dealt with appropriately could disqualify a leader. So the concept of confession is important from a biblical perspective. Right, so it's good to kind of like clean your palate. So I didn't acknowledge that until I kind of read this.
I think it's a result, not like a negative motive.
Pardon?
It's a result.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't see it as a motive, but that's why I said probably like hypocrisy is where it's kind of coming from. So that's why I thought it's just important to mention, because some people might say, hey, you know what, I don't qualify for being a leader. I do X, Y, and Z, and I lead this, and that as an example. You know what I mean? The other one that Thomas and someone else kind of mentioned was a biblical error or false teaching. Right? So this is when you're trying to bring your own agenda, bring your own agenda, teach people like hypocrisy or things like that. So that is a bad motive. Okay. So like 4 basic principles of someone who is a leader in this context is someone who is pursuing a God-centered lifestyle. Right? That's important. Someone who believes in the Word, so the Bible. Right? If you don't, like, this is like the principle. Right, so Christ-centered, someone who believes in the Bible, someone who is a servant, so a leadership who is a servant, works together with other leaders and is a shepherd, right? So a shepherd doesn't necessarily just lead and the sheep hear his voice, right? Sometimes sheep fall in holes, right, or get left behind in hills. A shepherd would go out of his way and go pick them up, for example. So there's the exertion, right? He has a rod. So I never knew this. So a rod of a shepherd, has that kind of circular kind of component. So the intention is, so when a sheep falls in a hole, he actually turns it around and picks them up by their armpit, right? And it actually hurts. But that's what he uses to. So sometimes you have to act like that. So it's not just leading by just teaching, but it's actively going, wherever you are. I need to go get you and reconcile you with God. So does anyone have anything else to add to that? And then Mary hopefully should come down and she needs to do the second part. Okay, so 4 more points, and we'll try and make them a discussion. Or you can ask yourself, do I relate to this? So I won't read the whole paragraphs, but just the point. So it said, I recognize the Bible as the true word of God and the authority in my life. Right? So if you're a leader, would you say that? Can you say that? Right? So I'll repeat that again. I recognize the Bible as the true word of God and the authority in my life. So that's principle. The second one, I am in a personal, growing relationship with Christ, my Savior and Lord. Right? So, in the scenario where Andrew was the leader who had a sin, he's pursuing that lifestyle. Wow, I'm dead to it. I'm not pursuing it. I'm doing it for other selfish reasons. This is a tough one. Number 3, I agree to submit and to be accountable to the leaders of my church, whom God has taken in the roles of their responsibility. Right? So that's another quality of a leader from a small group. And then the fourth one, which I think is important, is to have the emotional capacity to be able to handle people's emotions, strains, and like whatever other kind of like things that they go through. So to be emotionally steady in yourself and to be able to handle other people's emotions. So how do you guys feel about that? Or if you want me to repeat any of those.
Do we pick from them, or are there options, or how do we feel about each statement?
So what do you think? Do you think these 4, for example, are optional, or should you pursue all or select?
One more time. So emotional.
So recognizing the Bible as like the foundation.
Yeah.
Pursuing a personal relationship with God is number 2. 3, submitting and being accountable to the leaders of the church. And the 4th one is being emotionally, what was the term? Having the emotional capacity to be able to lead a group.
All of the above.
All
I
of the
think
above.
all of the above. Maybe
You go
some
for it.
areas we're strong, some areas each recognize that they need to work on it or pray for it. Some of them I can check the box and say, okay, I have this, or I believe in this or that, but there are some areas that I believe that need some work.
Yeah.
Just a silly question. Why do you need the last one? Emotional capacity.
Okay. So what do you guys think? Why do you guys, like if you're leading a small group, do you think you need...
It's not like a support group.
What do you guys think?
But if like Daniel's leading us right now, okay, he's leading this small group, and I have a disagreement with Daniel. This is my interpretation of it. If I have a disagreement with Daniel, he needs to be, or if I'm saying the wrong thing potentially, you need to have the emotional capacity to, reel it in and talk about it and, right, and lead us in that right direction versus like an attack. That's the way I read. I'm reading it.
Yeah. Like if you said something that Daniel disagreed with and he threw like a fit and like lost his temper, you can't say that. How are and then it's just gonna lose.
Yeah. Or shut you out. Like no, that's insignificant, Mira. You can't really say to that because the church fathers don't teach us that, and that's the end of the discussion. That sort of thing. That might hinder me from even wanting to not even be part of the small group, but even a part of like the overall. Is that really what my church believes in?
I like to think of a leader or a servant as they like John the Baptist when Jesus came. And John 3:30, he must increase, but I must decrease. And I think if I apply this in any aspect, in any way, I think this will be a good character for a successful leader and servant.
The leader that came to my mind was Moses. So Moses had his flaws and his shortcomings, but at the same time, like those 4 things, he fulfilled those. So he had the emotional capacity. He listened to
all the complaints.
Yeah, well think about it, right?
I'm reading numbers right now.
Every,
That's why.
oh yes, I mean every other day, everybody would complain. Like Moses, we're suffering from slavery. Moses, you brought us out of Egypt where we had food. Moses, it was like, well, what do you want me to do for you? Like, he needed
But
that.
he would still go back and advocate.
For sure. Yeah, of course.
Like not exactly what you're saying, like not too bad, suck it up.
Yeah.
This is the word of God.
Right? Like he was still taking it in, and he wasn't showing them all the time his frustration. He was coming back to God and having very raw and transparent conversations.
And that's the third
Yeah.
point, right? Where you're saying submitting to the authorities of the church, right? So at that time, it
Yeah.
would have been his conversations with God. So,
I like this.
Yeah.
We did touch on it last week, and I'm happy you mentioned it because we identified like leaders in the Bible, and it's pretty cool that you identified someone in the Bible. You're like, how does he do it? Because there's nothing wrong with that, right? We can use other people's experiences.
Well, for Moses, God took him a long time to get him to that stage. I mean, he was leader by nature, strong, effective, full of himself, and really it took God 40 years or more
40 years, yeah.
just to get him right.
And he was
So
transformed.
it was a big
in the
job.
process,
It was a big
right?
job to, it wasn't easy for Moses to come from behind.
And I think just to add to like, or to answer Shree's question, like I found like in some of the small groups I was in, like people share a lot of like very deep like ideas, thoughts, like feelings, and I think like part of like as a leader you need to be able to like empathize with them and like also not like have a total breakdown of like a group, and then being able to like kind of have that moment to like what's what I'm looking for, to acknowledge like whatever they're saying and then like move to the next like thing, I think.
And you were saying a small group is not always.
It's not a support group.
It's not a support group, right? Because we talked about that last week. But not that I disagree with that. There shouldn't be a support group. Generally, when everyone kind of starts leading their own small group, I wouldn't say follow the rules like to the tick, check mark. You really have to adapt to what's happening and acknowledge what's happening. So if you're in a scenario where, like, I'm just gonna use it, like, it's kind of turning into a support thing, and if it's convenient and you kind of just use your wisdom, and if she needs, like, she's spilling out her hearts, and I'm like, okay, whatever, we're going to Matthew, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
That's like emotional intelligence.
Yeah. So we really have to, like, be able to read the scene and do what's right. So say, for instance, the agenda was that we were supposed to read X and up, like, from 1 to 10, and we only go up to 3, right? And then this kind of seemed like this is where it should kind of focus on. So be it, right? Not necessarily saying, okay, yeah, like, don't come here and spill out, you know what I mean? Like, there is an agenda, like what Dina was saying, but also to analyze.
You have to recognize when God is speaking to you, and it's like, okay, Mira, you have an agenda, or Daniel, you have an agenda, but like, yeah, we're gonna get to it, but this could be a maybe the focus instead of what you wanted to focus on. Sure, there is a beginning and an end and a focus area, but maybe just tweak it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I'll share this random story with you, and feel free to stop me if I'm taking away from the focus of this.
So we need to talk about John.
I was living in the beaches back in the day in my 20s, and I like got ready to go to church, and I was taking the subway to, I don't even remember, SMSB. And I was getting on transit and heading downtown, and an old lady was walking down the stairs at the Woodbine station in her cane, and she's like, can you show me where, how the eastbound train or the westbound train? I'm like, yeah, sure, over there, turn right and you're good to go. And she's like, okay, thank you, but she kind of still looked lost, and I'm like, I'm running late, man, I need to get to church on time. And I didn't even, until I got on the train and the door closed, did I realize that maybe that was like, get your purpose right, Mira. Like, God has, put this person in front of me to help them out, and I just, pointed her up to the platform instead of, taking her to the station and showing her the way. So it's like God presents opportunities for you in your small group, in your day-to-day life, and you just have to like pick the moments. When we were talking about emotional attention, yeah, so that's how you kind of, you have to realize that should be the focus and pick up on that. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was new. Like, we didn't actually call it out here, but emotional intelligence, I think here it was referring to having emotional capacity to deal with, because people can like say things that can be emotional. You may not be able to handle it, but I think what we kind of came up with, that there's an importance for emotional intelligence in from someone who is a good leader.
And about emotional capacity, like that's kind of why we wanted to do this training like this, because we wanted everybody to develop relationships with other people, and also with Daniel and Mary, and most of you already have a relationship with me, so that when stuff comes up, you know, when you do have a night which was like a little bit like, whew, that was heavy or whatever, you know, you have somewhere to turn, you have someone you can speak to, you have Daniel and Mary who went on this journey with you, of course you always have me, you have each other, like these new relationships of people that you've developed that are on the same page in terms of small groups with you. Like, you know, you may have spouses or really close friends or whatever elsewhere, that's great, but they haven't been on this same, they're not necessarily on the same page, like small groups page as you know. So
can I just add something to that one?
Yeah.
So I know Abuna said like Mary and Daniel, but I could talk about on my behalf. Like, Daniel doesn't know more than what you know, right? Like, I'm also going through the same experience, but like I could vouch to be a point of contact where if there's something I don't know, I could say I'll go and find that out for you, right? Like, for instance, it might be Thomas who actually knows X, and I might just refer you to Thomas, or you can go to Thomas directly. But I'm just kind of like, you know, a person that you can use me as a contact, but I'm going through this journey with you guys as well.
Yeah, it's not like know-it-alls. No, rather it's more just friends along the way, because that emotional capacity thing is very real, you know. And I heard like some discussion earlier about the confession thing. That's also very real, because like we have to realize like we're in a spiritual war, like a spiritual battle, you know, and like small groups is all about like discipleship and maturity and helping people, you know, and helping ourselves, and together growing together to spiritual maturity, you know. So so there's gonna be there's gonna be like some opposition to that from the enemy, and if I have like some like, you know, areas of my life that I, you know, haven't made peace with God and with, you know, myself in, then you know, that's gonna be like that's gonna be like it's just gonna trip me up for sure. When I went upstairs to see if I could liberate Mary, she told me to hand this out and for us to do this 5 love languages quiz. Maybe you're already familiar with the love languages, or maybe you aren't. If you have a pen, just read through the statements and circle the ones that I think it has instructions that circle the ones that you feel the most strongly about.
Those are the 2 options.
So the basis of love languages is that we all communicate love and receive love in different ways, and so the authors of the 5 love languages have broken it down to 5 main languages. And so if you read through the statements and circle the letters and then count out which, you know, how many A's you have, how many B's you have, how many C's you have, and so on, you'll kind of get the kind of.
So we have like 15 minutes left till kind of we wrap up at 9. So what we're gonna do is probably just do this exercise, have a summary of what we discussed, and like we'll close today's discussion as that. Okay, so just to kind of let you know what the
quick question. What is the difference between the definition of leadership in Christian perspective and non-Christian perspective?
Okay.
Just hand it over.
So did you guys hear that question?
No.
Sorry,
I
guys.
just asked the question.
So can you,
I'm just wondering what is the definition of leadership in terms of Christianity and Christian perspective.
so it's a good question. Who's
Sorry, we missed a question. Sorry.
Okay.
Like, look at the quiz here. Christian versus unchristian leadership.
Yeah, the definition of leadership.
I can think of like politics, like the way they do things and the way you wouldn't want to do things like them, kind of. I don't know.
I think a good leader is still good, like whether it's Christian or not. Like a good leader, just like Andrew was saying, like they have that, that like picture where, they're leading the group, they're working with the group together. I think just if it's a Christian leader, then there's like Christ is the focus of the task or
remember we were
whatever.
saying motives?
Yeah, like, I don't know. I think there's still good leadership when it's not based on.
I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that you're either one or the other. You could technically be both.
There's no conflict.
A good leader that is focused on Christ and a good leader in general that's not Christian. I mean, I would say Gandhi was a good leader, but he wasn't Christian. I think good leadership doesn't necessarily have to be, it's not different whether you're Christian or not. If you're a good leader, right? I think if you're a bad leader, well, I don't want to say bad leader, but I mean, if you're not focused on Christ, you could still be doing things for the betterment of your group, for the betterment of the cause, for the betterment of whatever it is that you believe in. You're not being selfish. It just happens to be that the thing that you're really focused and putting all your effort in is not Christ, right? Maybe your manager at work is really focused on, the betterment of your team at work and the betterment of the company and the betterment of the financial gain for everybody on the team. So it's not necessarily Christ, but it doesn't mean he's a bad leader. He's a bad leader.
Yeah, I don't mean it is a bad leader or a good leader, but I think there is a difference. For example, if you in Christianity, leaders usually sacrifice, but in unchristian perspective, a good leader might be not to sacrifice, might be like to put himself like to serve the others. It is not like this. I don't know. I'm just
yeah.
I think there is conflict.
You think so? I don't see it. But even if I'm not Christian, I mean I am. But even if I'm not Christian, I could be a good leader and I could still sacrifice myself for the good of.
Because you're Christian.
No,
you think like this.
so I'm thinking like.
Well, I have a good leader at work, and I have two good leaders. One is Christian, and you can definitely see, like, my direct boss is Christian, and he is an amazing leader because he serves his team. But I also have another leader, and she's not Christian, and she's an amazing leader. And she also serves her team and puts them first and is very sacrificial. So I think, like, you can still be a good leader and you can embody a lot of those traits. For sure, a lot of those traits, I think, are biblical, are Christian. You know, the idea of, like, putting yourself down, sacrificing for the sake of others. Those are all definitely like biblical Christian principles. But I also feel that there's leaders who aren't Christian that still adopt those in their leadership style, right? And that's still.
I mean, if you think of like a police officer that dives in front of the president to take a bullet, right? I'm just saying.
It's the motivation why you.
He might have been Christian. Yeah. He might have not been Christian. It didn't necessarily affect the fact that he sacrificed himself and he gave himself for whatever his cause was, whatever he was called to do. The same way I see a good leader, it's not necessarily that if he's not Christian, he's not going to be a good leader, or he's going to be a good leader, but differently than if he were a good Christian.
think it's a really good question. I think it ties in a lot with what we're talking about today. I think it's an excellent question, actually. Like, a lot of people will say a lot of the Western culture is built on Christian principles, but a lot of people in the West are not Christian. So I think leadership's the same thing. I think like a good leader, like a really good leader, is going to abide by a lot of the Christian principles that we're going to talk about. And actually in the workplace, a good leader is very obviously very different to a bad leader. I'm sure everybody here has had experiences of both. And a good leader, like if you're underneath a good leader, you're going to feel that they have a servant heart, that they're loving, that they're all these Christian principles. They might not know that that's what it is that they're doing, but that's the essence of it. So I don't know if that answers the question, but so I don't know if you did the first page. We're gonna do as much as we can, but we're still gonna push on time today.
We haven't started that. We were just about to start this. So
Okay.
would you want us to start this? Or start with
Yeah.
this?
Well, while you're doing that, I'll talk, and then we can finish that questionnaire at home. Even there's something fun to do. Who's done one of these before? This 5 love languages questionnaire. Some of us haven't. So the reason we're doing it is because, like on the first page, it says that you will never earn the right to fully lead people that you don't love. So if people feel that you don't love them, you're never going to really be able to lead them properly. Like, you can force them, but that's not the same as leadership. Leadership is that you, like there's a story about King David where he like just muttered some words that he wanted water from the well, and his soldiers went and ran to go and get him water from this well, which meant that they could lose their lives. But they did it not because he asked them to, but because they really loved him, because he loved them. So that's what good leadership as a small group leader is that you're really going to love the people that you're serving in your small group, and they're going to feel that you love them as well. And the only way to love somebody is to know about them, to like know aspects of their life, and then to know what their love language is. Love languages teaches that different people have different way of understanding that they're loved, like or feeling loved. For one person, like, you might give them tons of gifts and they still don't feel loved. For them, if you came and helped them clean their house, that would make them feel loved. So it's about like trying to implement love languages in your small group as well, especially as a leader, and leading by example and doing that. So the question is just something fun to rediscover your own love languages, and you can tell your friends and nearest and dearest in mind what your love language is. But we'll move on just because of the time. I wanted us to share together what our love language was, but just because of the time, I'm wary of it. So this is really important. The second page, active listening. So another thing that makes a good leader, love is like one of the most important things, is being a good listener. So, like, especially as a small group leader, you don't want to be like teaching and didactic and whatever. You want, when people answer you, you want them to feel that their answer matters and means something. So, like, even just look at yourself when you answer me or Daniel today. They ask yourself, well, how could Mary and Daniel have responded better to my answer? Do you know what I mean? Like, how could they make me feel that I'm not just answering as like an answer, that they didn't really consider? Do you know what I mean? So that you don't do the same when you're leading your group. When you're leading your group, you make people feel that their answer really mattered and that you really heard their answer. Because that makes a big difference, and that will make people be more willing to open up. So there's a bunch of phrases on here. Maybe in your workplace you've been taught how to do active listening sometimes, because it's something that's very useful in all aspects of life, not just in a small group. But maybe somebody could read some of them for us, please.
Please tell me more about that. Let me see if I understood what you said. And could you repeat the last idea? I really want to hear that.
Yeah. So I mean, these are all, you can keep this with you and like keep it handy when you're leading your small groups to remind yourself how you can answer people, answer your questions. Is that clear? Anyone have any questions about that? Yeah. That's just so important as a small group leader. It's so tempting to want to go on and on and on talking at the people, but that's not what small groups is about. So that's like really useful. Okay. Then another aspect of being a leader is let me see if that's right. Yeah. Another aspect of a leader, like a leader needs a ton of skills. So the next thing we've got on here is like a little questionnaire, and we're going to address a lot of the things on this questionnaire during the training. So maybe just take a moment to read through skill assessment 1 and 2. and see how confident or not confident you feel in each of these aspects. And then we can share together for a minute or two, and then we'll move on to the next. So this is just to give us an idea. These are aspects that we're going to try and work on during our training. So go ahead, you can fill that out.
What does vision casting mean?
Vision casting. So sometimes you'll feel like a lot of the time people will say, like a leader like Steve Jobs, for example, like he had a vision of what he was going to make Apple to be like. Or I was reading about Jeff Bezos from Amazon. Like he has a vision, and he was able to build up this because he really had this clear vision. That's what we talked about last week. That you have as the leader. See, you guys are not going to be facilitators. Facilitator is different to a leader. Facilitator helps people to talk and chat and converse and bring out their feelings and share and feel heard and whatever. That's fantastic. But that's not the only aspect of your leadership. Your leadership, you're also, like we were saying last week, directing people towards an end goal. Whether it be to this group of people that I'm going to be leading, by the end of my 6 or 8 weeks, they're going to be really committed, quiet time people. Like, if anybody from church comes and asks them, they're going to know that this person who attended my small group, every day they're doing quiet time and they're getting a message from God. Or this group of people, by the end of the 6 or 8 weeks, they're going to be such prayer warriors, and their prayers going to be such a different quality. Like when they go to prayer meeting, everyone's going to know that that person who prayed out loud and prayed a really strong prayer, they were in Fedi's small group for prayer because they learned all the skills and they practice the skills. So a vision caster is somebody who in their group, they have a really clear vision of where they want their group to go. Yeah. Sorry, it was a very long explanation. So yeah, just tick and maybe you can share a few things that if people feel comfortable sharing. It's 2 pages long. How are we doing? About a minute? So would anybody like to share an area that they feel they would like to develop? Just, yeah, I really feel I want to develop in this area. I don't feel confident in this at all. Anybody want to share?
Using the Bible
Mhm.
in groups.
Are
Like,
you worried
I was
about-
just admiring him for like, oh, there's a verse in the Bible, about this and that, because he's done it last meeting and this meeting too. And for me, I'm like, man, I don't think I could pick a verse in the Bible where I'm like on the spot, just be like, let's visit this.
We
And
need Google. We should have that Google, what's it called, that Google machine in our small groups to answer, tell us what the verses are.
I've been doing that.
Yeah. I never remember. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people feel that actually. Yeah. What else?
One I was uncertain about is modeling accountability.
Mhm.
Like what
What does it
that
mean?
mean?
Or
yeah.
So I can't remember if we did that already or we're going to. So that's an important one. So modeling accountability. One of the questions we're going to do a little bit later is, as a leader, people are going to emulate or going to look up to. So this is a quality and something we need to strive towards. So if I'm not doing my quiet time, I'm not praying, I'm not attending liturgies on Sundays, I'm not doing whatever. As a leader, my standard is meant to be higher than everybody else's. So that's kind of what it is. I think modeling accountability is that I hold myself accountable so everybody else can see, and I'm open to them to tell me, Mary, maybe you shouldn't have done that, and not take it in a defensive manner or whatever. Yeah. Does that answer that?
Took it even a step further. I thought maybe as a leader, what's the word I'm looking for? I engage everybody in the group to look at themselves and feel accountable that they should be doing all of these things themselves, and participating in all the sacraments if they're not doing it. And then it's my job to kind of stir that up in them, be like, you know, kind of like how John the Baptist was doing it. Repent. This is the time. You got to do it. Yeah. Well, without saying in those words like that, but you know. And
yeah. No, you're right. Actually, that's probably more what it means. Yeah. Yeah, and you know what I found also is sometimes we feel that we need to show all of our strengths as leaders, but actually I think some of the best leaders are the ones that show their weaknesses. So if you turn up to small group and at the very beginning of small group say, guys, I have a confession to make. I did quiet time once this week, and I really wish that wasn't the case. I want you to encourage me to do that's gonna make everybody else feel like I can share my weaknesses and not pretend to be somebody that I'm not, and it makes them feel that you're trying to be closer to God. Yeah.
Your defense mechanism goes down when you kind of bring it that low.
I agree with that to a point. I was just thinking, man, last time I was in a small group when somebody started off with, and I didn't do this and this and this, and we had a laugh about it. You know what I mean? And so accountability went down.
Oh,
do you know what I mean?
Because you took it too easy.
Yeah, and then it just like there was like a piece like complacency started to.
It's okay to not do quiet time. Okay.
Exactly. So it's just like it's such a fine line because I'm so easygoing with that, and I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll confess my sins to everybody. But it's just like all of a sudden, like people are like, yeah, okay, so she does it.
So maybe like I don't know what you guys think, because I think it's important to share your weaknesses, but then how do we not fall into that trap?
I think it comes down to potentially the dynamics of the group and the maturity of the group. Yeah. So perhaps it may not be wise to do that at the beginning, say for instance, the group, but as the group matures and you set the norm.
Yeah. I also think it has to do a lot with delivery, right? So, and I mean, I don't know the context of that group or that situation, but so I agree with you in terms of like assessing like the dynamic and like the time in your small group when you do it, but it's also about delivery. So am I coming in and saying like, oh, you know, I really didn't do my quiet time, but I really wish I didn't, it's just I got distracted, like I really, can you guys pray for me, encourage me, like, as opposed to, oh, you know what, like I didn't do my quiet time, and then we all laugh about it. Like, what is my delivery and my intention for sharing that, right? Because I think there's something to be said about creating that environment where you are being transparent with discernment, right? But a lot of focus on the delivery and the intention of why am I sharing this at the moment?
Yeah, I think this has been again said before, putting God first or putting self first. So really if I'm putting God and God's aims first, this will get all in line. Yeah. I'm putting myself first. Yeah, I didn't do it. I think it's okay. I'm going to that.
Yeah, but you forgot that you're wrong. Yeah. What's another area that anybody wants to share that they feel that they want to work on?
Choosing curriculum.
Choosing curriculum. Yeah, that came up last week.
I always call them.
Oh yeah.
Like last time when I was at my other work, and remember we started like a Christian like reading group at work, and it took me months to choose a book, and I just literally texted him and I'm like, can you just choose some books for me?
I think in one of the chapters we're going to talk about choosing curriculum. Yeah, because if you've never done it before, you don't know the curriculum, which I don't know the curriculum that well. Like, I don't even know where to look.
And then for me, it's like I always want like I want the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
Like I want the like best of the best that's gonna like penetrate, resonate with people, and like I'm nowhere near that knowledgeable, so I just go to stuff like that.
Yeah, that's okay. That's good. That's a good thing to do. Find somebody who does know.
Yeah.
I think the problem, sorry, with that like curriculum and creating a small groups is like, do I pick a curriculum after my group has been selected and try to do it to that, or do I have an idea of what I want? Like, you know how like you two were kind of saying like, oh, you want to gear it towards like, or talk about like parenthood or whatever, and so you kind of have an idea, but then it's almost like what comes first? Like, do you create a group and then try to curate the curriculum for that group, or pick a curriculum that I like and I think would be really interesting to do, and then kind of
go on. Has anyone tried either, or
doesn't your curriculum is it just that you pick a group and you have a curriculum that has a beginning, middle, and an end, and then what happens when it ends? Don't you just pick another curriculum? Like for example, I'm gonna pick a book for mothers, okay? Okay, and my small groups is mothers. Like I just once that book is done, now I'm gonna be like, well, what else can I pick that would be of interest to mothers, right? Does that make sense?
But that's because your group's all moms. What if they're not all moms? What if they're a mix of lots of things?
Yeah,
right?
so she can't pick. I'm not saying
Yeah.
you can't. Sorry, emotional capacity. But like if you pick a curriculum and then pick your group based on that curriculum, then your then you can't change your curriculum after that. Like you're married to that curriculum.
Right, like that topic or that.
I also think there's a difference between picking a theme and picking a
Maybe that's
curriculum, right? So saying like I want to start a small group for like mothers and approaching motherhood from a spiritual perspective is a theme. The curriculum would be, am I choosing to do a book? Which book am I choosing? Or am I choosing to do X, Y, and like follow this blog post? Like to me that's curriculum, whereas the theme is motherhood from a right?
Daniel, this is all like going agile, waterfall, right? You gotta be able to pivot.
Yeah. But just kind of going, you guys mentioned, theme, you mentioned like mothers. So what we talked about last week was about the vision, right? So when you get the vision in mind, you know who you're gonna, the people you would want to invite potentially, or God sets in your heart to bring to these kind of events. I don't think there's a right or wrong. You can perhaps before you start, there's different ways, right? You can
if you're doing it by location,
or you can identify people before you start, get an idea of what people are interested in, and then you can set a curriculum, right? But I think personally how we did it is like we kind of gave people, when Diana and I and our team kind of did it, we just kind of had an idea of something and we kind of did it for 2-3 weeks, just short-lived. And then we kind of got a census, and then we kind of like pivoted and then found out what we really wanted. So what I'm trying to say with that is perhaps you can do a feeler from the beginning, or you can have a short start end. So like we're gonna do something and it's gonna be for like 3 weeks. We're gonna do something and it's like just for 5 weeks. That's the start, that's the end. Just commit to it, and from there we're gonna learn. And then as you progress, knowing what the vision is, you'll get more clarity potentially. Just as a suggestion.
I mean, it'd be nice if the church has like certain like, I don't know, books or curriculum, like ideas that would help the group.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know what we can do at the end of our training is we can like spend a bit of time praying together, and then we can say, okay guys, are there some themes that are coming up recurrently, like in people's hearts, and then we can look up a few curricula and have them available, and then you guys can flick through them like in the last week or something.
Exchange.
Or change. Yeah.
I know we did this.
Yeah, and it worked well.
And we can share the curriculum or whatever. Pass it around.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But so nobody try like. I think there's a session that goes through it in detail. I'm not sure exactly what it talks about, like how to run it or how to choose it or what. So we'll figure it out together. Okay. Let's jump to the next one. I'm sure there's other things that are on people's hearts and that they're.
Sometimes I found like some stuff, but I feel I'm good to.
Sorry guys. Sorry. Andrew, like just so we can.
Like there's some skills like I found, okay, I'm good with that like at work, but I don't know in a small group.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah. Like what? Like what example?
Like okay, I'm okay with like at work, like planning a meeting and discussing discussions, but I don't know. I'm gonna be able to do that. Like
this would break this point. What's the difference between spiritual leader and work leader? I think there's big overlap between both of them. So
you can do it.
All skills are transferable.
And then one of the topics one of the things at the end is talking about the Holy Spirit. I don't know if I missed a lot of what Daniel was saying, but in this chapter it also talks about like leaders in the Bible. Can you think of some leaders in the Bible? Shoot out a few names. Maybe did we do this already?
Moses.
So Moses was like, I can't even talk, Lord, don't send me, you know? So the Holy Spirit really, really will equip us to fulfill this role, and practice makes perfect. Like, I'm sure everybody here who's led a small group has made a few mistakes and whatever, and it passes. Like, God covers you, and that's okay. Like, but like everyone here, I'm sure you will all be able to lead a small group and lead it very beautifully. I'm sure of every person that's here. Like, I know everyone like a bit at least, and I'm sure everyone here can lead a group beautifully. And God is gonna lift you up, and like prayer is 100% the key. And preparing yourself spiritually at home in your own personal time, and then God will take care of it, and you'll be shocked at how your group is like blossoming. You'll be shocked. Yeah. But yeah, it's a very valid point. Yeah, it's really intimidating because, like you're saying, maybe you feel like you don't know where any of the Bible verses are, and what if somebody asks me a hard question and stuff like that? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But we're gonna talk. We're gonna. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't know. I was saying you have other people in the group that
Yeah,
have other things
yeah.
to offer.
Yeah, and it's okay. Like I have a terrible memory for Bible. I'll give talks and I won't remember where the Bible verse is, and I'll just say, "Sorry, I don't know where the Bible verse is." And when can you tell me what the reference is or find it from here? That's okay. Like it is what it is. Yeah. Okay. This is kind of linked to what we were just saying. So the next page. What time is it? We have a few minutes left. Or?
Probably like 10 minutes.
It's
Max.
9/11. Oh, it's 9/11. No. We should finish. So we'll do this, the rest of this, another time if we can squeeze it in. Sorry, guys, that was a bit disruptive.
Are you sure?
Well, I don't want to keep you
no
guys.
need to go.
I'm sure.
Can you guys spare like
A
10 minutes?
democracy as part of a
I don't
small
want to.
group.
Because maybe someone's
Talked
embarrassed
about that
to
last
say to
week.
go.
Like how I recall things from last week.
Ah.
A small group
Oh,
is
yeah, that is
democratic.
it.
We can do one last one. Do you want to do one last sheet and then we'll? Because I really don't want to keep people late. Because sorry that was a bit off track. Okay, so leadership fears. So we're gonna if we could just take that. Do you think we've covered that or?
No.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So leadership fears. What makes you hesitate as a leader? What makes you worry about being a leader? So just scribble down a few ideas and we'll share them together.
Stumbling block.
Being a stumbling block. Yeah, worried about saying the wrong thing or being a bad example. Yeah.
The fact that I check or what I need improvement on pretty much is everything that's
Yeah.
like prayer, Bible, everything that has to do with being a Christian, and I could organize a meeting like no problem.
Yeah. But that's a gift. Organizing a meeting is a big gift.
Yeah, but it's not like that,
No,
but
but
I
other
just think
people
that-
here wouldn't feel that they have that, like.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Yeah.
But
No, I
Fears.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. But
What-
sorry, just like I hope we get to talk about this, but like how can we avoid being burned out?
Mm-hmm.
So like something like that, if we were to do like collaboration with someone else. So if hey, I could organize, set up a meeting, send the messages, but you lead, for example. So to be able to avoid being burnt out, you can still help. Like a co-pilot kind of thing, do certain things. It's not just one individual. So we can talk about that a bit more when it comes to like how do you avoid being burnt out. But like I hear what you mean by being fierce, but it could be in calibration, right? To avoid that
Like
stuff.
help balancing each other. What other fears do people have?
Low self-esteem.
Like too shy to lead or too.
No, for example, if you have like circumstances in work or in life, and then you have to arrange for a group meeting or so, your mind is like get confused because you have like your own life and you have your own challenges at work or at life, and then you switch to lead a group. And then I believe you should have like be a good example for people, and this is for me it is a bit a challenge for me to be like a good example, and I have like challenges in life.
Oh, like you feel like you're struggling already too much, and okay, yeah. No, that's absolutely. I'm sure most people here would agree. In their own
Yeah,
lives,
like it's hard. I think like what you're trying to say is like it's hard to lead in this domain when I'm not leading in like these other things.
Yeah, you have your own challenges, and then you switch to lead a group, and you're supposed to be like a model for them,
Right,
and a good model, not like good, for example, in prayer, good in introducing God to people, and you have your own challenges. That is why.
I think it's important to be gracious with ourselves, right? Like, God is so gracious with us, and He knows our hearts, right? So I totally understand, right? Because sometimes I'm like, hey, my life is a mess. Like, who am I to come? But I think it's like, where's your heart, right? And God knows your heart. And so if you're coming and you're serving and you're praying for people, or you have like every intention to want to come and serve these people, God knows that, and He will complete, I truly believe in my heart, He will complete whatever we put out there, right? If I'm giving Him, if I'm at the end of the day, if I have said, God, I have given you my 100%, maybe my 100% in comparison to someone else is, I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's not that great. But if I have given Him my absolute 100%, I truly believe He'll complete it. So I think it's important to, yes, hold ourselves accountable and push ourselves, but to also be gracious with ourselves and to like receive the grace He's given us and trust that He will complete whatever we've given Him. But our job is to give Him our 100% and let Him do the rest. I just, from my own experience, that's...
It's a good experience and a good day.
I just think it's an important reminder, right?
I agree with you, yeah.
In service. There's been a lot of times where He's definitely completed the little that I've given Him, right? And magnified it, so.
So some other challenges were the commitment and inconsistency as well. I think this echo with what you say, but it could be other reasons for this as well.
Like what?
Unable to, you commit yourself into too many things, so you can't really you get burnt out, or you can't really keep up with what you're committed for. And personal weaknesses for inconsistencies. I mean, again, not putting or not planning right at the start, and then failing to meet all the requirements.
I think all these things that everyone's sharing, I'm sure 90% of the room feels the same about all these things. I feel the same about a lot of these things. Like even starting the small group, I was like, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can do it. I have my own plenty weaknesses. I come to the liturgy really like, like I have my own struggles and whatever, and but God covers. And the same thing for everyone here. God will cover you as well in whatever area you really feel like, I'm like zero in that, But no, it's good to know that we all have similar fears. Does anybody else want to share anything else about that?
I just won't talk too much about it, but just the way people perceive me.
Yeah.
Not the way I would want to be perceived.
Yeah. You're worried about how people perceive you.
Yeah. Because I still kind of think if you're not confident and there's a bit of vulnerability in it.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of vulnerability.
Right? So it's not how people just perceive it, because I think it's always a perception, but perceiving me in the way that I would want to be perceived.
Yeah.
You were going on the same lines with some of my own fear, just being judged in general. Like, for example, when I lead something, this is my standard kind of thing, and then if people feel like the standard's not here, I don't feel good about myself. I don't know if this is where you were going with, but I felt the first couple lines were how I felt.
Yeah, no, sure. In the same, like, oh, like this guy's not cool. This guy is, those terms.
You're what? If it makes you feel better, I thought
if this pen was sharper, I would just throw it like a dart.
Yeah, Daniel, you started here with the beginning of the small group, but now in my you're now a little bit here.
Yeah, and that's where
the
fear of ego. The fear of ego.
You've remained the same.
Yeah.
You've been consistent.
We'll talk later.
I know where you live.
Yeah, so that's one.
Are there any other fears? Can you hear more? Like, we'll hear more. Why not? Any other concerns?
To the point that you were saying earlier, like you start out with, oh, I didn't do my quiet time this week, and then you kind of bring it down a little. Everybody kind of, oh, me too, it's fine. But then the next week, And then the week
You
after,
still haven't done
and then
it.
the week
Yeah.
after, and you're like, well, what kind of leader are you? Yeah, so it's like a build up of, you know, I had the best of intentions, but I'm not good, or, you know, and whatever. It doesn't have to be with quiet time, but just for whatever reason. It's not like I had one bad week, but I had one bad small
Like the
group.
street.
Ah.
One bad what?
One
Small
bad
group.
small group. Like, so that's a fear.
Yeah. What does anybody else think about that?
Irene, what do you think?
About
Fear.
No, I'm thinking. Well, my fear would be like the small group isn't getting along, or like the people.
Okay, yeah.
How are we accepting of each other, or how do we get together, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Just you know.
And as the leader, you're like the parent. Like you want everyone to get on together and everyone to share and to talk.
But just you can't force things, or
Yeah.
I don't know. Just
Yeah.
not seeing how
do you make it
other
work?
people-
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. Yeah.
I think mine would be that no one finds it useful and then they just don't want to come.
Find it. I don't
They
find
don't
the
turn
small
up.
group useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's devastating. You put all this hard work in, you get the chips out, and like no one comes.
Yeah.
That's, fries, popcorn, tea, coffee.
I have a question. Is there a difference between leading a small group and large group?
The
A large
size
group?
of the group?
Yeah.
We recommend that small group should be between 6 to 10, pushing it 12, but it shouldn't be more than 10. And we prefer more than 4. It's just 6 is a good number because sometimes 3 people don't come, or like 3 people don't come. So that's why it's always good to.
How about fear of offending someone that you didn't ask them to be in a small group?
Befriending
or
someone?
offending someone.
Like you didn't invite them to be in your group.
Or offending someone in your group, like along the lines of like the group not getting along, like someone in the group saying something to someone, or someone alienating someone else.
That's where diplomacy comes in.
God, small group sounds really scary now. But you know, on that, I think I heard Abuna mentioning that. I think he did, or I wasn't sure. But once the small groups are up and running, we want you guys to share with us like anything that you're struggling with. Like you had a bad week, like Danny was saying, you made the food or whatever, and nobody turned up, and 10 minutes before everyone's texting like I can't come, and you're like sitting there with an empty home or whatever it might be. You offend somebody and they start crying or whatever. Like share your experiences with us. I'm sure it hasn't only happened to you.
It really hasn't.
All of us, and also this is one thing. I'm going to end on this because I don't want to keep you late. I really don't. When I was upstairs and I was trying to make Anna sleep, like she wouldn't fall asleep again. I was like, fall asleep, but she can sense. Kids can sense your like agitation, so she's staying awake. I'm like, fall asleep in my heart, and like I tried to get out of bed like 4 times, and every time she's like, "Mommy, are you there, Mommy?" Oh my God, Mommy. And then something in me told me relax. Because Daniel was meant to do the first part and I was meant to do the second part. So I was like, oh my God, I was listening, like, is he finished? Is he like dragging it out? Oh my God, it's going to ruin the group because I can't go and do the second part, whatever. And I was like stressing about the group. And I felt like, that's not the right attitude. This is God's group. God will take care of it. And then you guys laughed and I was like, good time, you're okay. It's okay. And with your groups as well, just tell yourself, this is God's group. This is God's work. It's not my group. It's not my work. He's actual leader. I'm just like the body of the leader. This is his group. Whatever he wants to be done will be done. Whatever he doesn't, won't happen. He will cover my weakness. He will cover any problems that happen. He'll take care of it. It's okay. And I was thinking, like, should I bring Anna downstairs, like, against her? Well, she didn't want to come down. I was like, come downstairs. She's like, I don't want to go downstairs. I was like, fine. I was like, that's not, like, we shouldn't upset the people in our life for the sake of small group. We shouldn't hurt people or hurt our responsibilities for the sake of small group. Everything should be in harmony and in peace. So just remind yourself of that all the time when the devil's like because the devil will try and cause a problem or rock the boat or whatever. Anything that disturbs peace, rocks the boat, makes you really agitated, frustrated, it's not from God. Just remind yourself, God is in charge of this group. Anything that's making the peace go away, that's not from him. And just tell him, you take care of it, you direct. whatever. So that's like critical when facing any of these fears, any of the problems that we're gonna face in small group. So does anybody want to ask or share anything before we wrap up? Sorry for finishing a bit late. Okay. I'm really excited, guys, that you're doing this. I already feel closer to everybody already. What should we set for ourselves as a goal this week? What do you think? Something to do on Sunday at church. What do you feel would be a nice goal with the context? I don't have anything more to do.
Sorry, I can't.
Like come to church and don't mind
No, I'm okay.
Like come to church and like have a goal in my attitude on church on Sunday. I don't know. With this in mind.
For me, is to identify what motivates me to do this. Because in those scenarios where no one turns up, I'm gonna have to reflect.
Yeah.
And go back to what is it that is motivating me to do.
Yeah.
So it's to identify that, like how we had mission statement and division. This week for me, the message is like
What's
identify.
my motivator?
Yeah.
Anybody else? No. Something you're really gonna try to act on this week.
Maybe someone you used to see on Sunday and then you didn't see him, and then you care about him and like follow up and ask about him.
Ask about him. One more thing. Take home action.
To be consistent with all like your daily routine.
Yeah. And it's a work in progress. My quiet time has been really sucky. But serving helps us to get closer to God as well. Like we're all gonna benefit from serving. Just don't let the devil stop you from serving. Like service brings us closer to him as well. Yeah. So that's a nice one. Okay.
Thomas, sir, you had something you wanted to say?
Oh yeah.
Well, okay, so I have this one fear. It's not like it hasn't necessarily come up, but like I sometimes wonder that I'm gonna there's gonna be some cultural misunderstanding that's gonna come up.
Yeah.
Like especially if I'm
many
leading a
of them are
group.
Egyptian, you mean?
Yeah, exactly, right? Like so my family and my mom's family's like Canadian, like mostly like English Canadian. I hate to say like they've been here for a long time. My dad was from Poland, so I just saw like differences of like cultural differences that were not necessarily like I just saw a lot of situations of like interactions with families and stuff, and how there was stuff that was just not even something somebody said or whatever, not even
just
really a big deal.
Yeah.
And just ways of or just ways that people acted that were different, you know what I mean, and how that was like it's just a thing, right? So it's not something I'm super conscious of all the time, but I'm thinking if I was like leading a group, is there anything that I might not be aware of that could be sort of like a faux pas or something, you know what I mean? Like
that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
To just to think about, that would be maybe something obvious or something, but I can't think of anything because that's kind of like if I knew
It's
it.
like how Daniel says garage and whatever it is.
Yeah. Like if I knew
Well,
it.
it's so true. Like even coming from England, I
How about
have tons
demotivation?
of cultural differences between Canadians
Discouraging? Is that
and
part of
British
your vision?
culture.
Yeah,
I
and
think it's
if
just
I
funny,
knew it,
I
I
don't think it's
wouldn't.
discouraging.
Like I wouldn't do it. Like I would try not to think of like
Why Phil?
there's certain things I notice that are not like they're not a big deal, but it's just like different perspectives, right? Obviously, right? So I'm just that's one thing I would be kind of conscious
So how
of.
can we? What's
I don't. Yeah, I don't.
No,
It's
nobody
like a
knows about
fear,
that.
but I don't know how. There's
No, for
there's not
sure.
really like
Things
a.
that-
I don't know how you could.
address it.
Yeah, but I feel like I don't think anybody would hold it against me.
I don't think so. And I
either,
think it
right?
works both ways as well.
Yeah.
Like
I think it's it would be one of your strong suits, to be honest with you. Like my Serbian husband, in our last small group, he brought a lot of questions that, if it was the wrong small group, they might have been offended by it.
Yeah.
But because there's that trust that you're building, and like we talked about with love, if you love your small group, they're gonna love you back. I feel like you shouldn't have to worry about that, and that your point of views and the things that you might find that might be quirky or whatever it is, they will be seen as strengths and just a different. You're bringing in a different light that somebody like me, who grew up in the Coptic church, never thought about before, and it's such a cool, what's the word I'm looking for?
Twist on it.
It's so cool and it's appreciated actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
From weakness to strength.
Okay, I like that. That's a nice way to put it. Okay.
And I think also another thing is, even just in our room here, like, not to assume anybody's culture, because like we were saying at the beginning, like a lot of us have all grown up. I've actually not grown up here.
Yeah.
Like I grew up in England.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
So
for sure.
It's nice that we're all from different cultures of some sort. I know
That's
what
a
I know
good
what you
way to
mean.
put it.
Like a lot of people are Egyptian. I understand that, but
like I mean it in more of a broad
No, I
way
know
of like
what you're
diaspora kind of stuff, but still that's a very
Yeah,
good point
yeah,
because
so-
that all those other places are factors too.
Yeah,
right?
like, and the more we discover about, like today we discovered a lot about one another.
Mhm.
So maybe sometimes even coming from that, like that aspect will help you to be more open-minded towards your group and not assume stuff
Right.
where somebody else might incorrectly assume stuff.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, no, I hear you. What you're saying. God guide us all in our groups.
Cool. Thanks.
Any other things to share? That was a really great group, guys.
Yeah, a lot of content.
Yeah, really good stuff. Okay, let's pray. Me two of us can pray, and we'll wrap up.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for guiding our discussion today and for helping us to identify the important motivations that we need to have to become small group leaders, for helping us to identify those things that we have talents in and those things that we may not have such strong talents in, and where we need your grace. Please, Lord, continue to guide us and to help this group to grow and to prepare us to lead our own groups. Please open our minds and our hearts to receive your word and to come closer to you and to reconcile with you. Amen.
Help us to lead by example, to be able to know you, to understand you, to be able to guide and help others to know you as well. We don't have the answers to all the questions, but you live within our heart. You will guide us. You will give us the right answers when we don't know them. Thank you, Lord, for being with us and among us. Bless every single person in this group, everyone that could make it and that couldn't make it. Be with us forever. Amen.
Lord, thank you so much for this beautiful group that are being so open with one another, Lord. Thank you that you're helping us to share our fears and our weaknesses with one another, Lord. And I pray that you cover those weaknesses and that you reassure us about any of the things we're concerned about and we're worried about, Lord. And I pray that we would see your power in the small groups that we will be leading, Lord, that we'll see that you will do miraculous things that we could never have done by ourselves, Lord. I pray that you equip every person here to really be a strong, spirit-led leader of their group, Lord, to be a loving leader, most importantly. Guide us to take care of those who are missing this week and bring them safely back with us next week. Through the intercessions of all the saints who listen to us and say together in voice, Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
So next week, we're going to try and finish these off. So if you think you're going to forget yours, just leave it here. I won't keep. Or you can take it home with you, bring it with you next week.
And I hope you guys still have the one from last week. And if you don't have it, we'll try to. Yeah, because it has the vision statement. And the idea is that all of this kind of saves and eventually it goes.
Yeah. And then your questionnaires, maybe try and do them by yourself this week. And then next week, that can be our icebreaker to share together what our language of love is. Sound good?
Where do you park your cars?
I parked in the parking lot, but I wanted to throw
Such a nice day.
Somebody invited me to like one of those challenges on Fitbit, and I'm in second place, and I hate losing. Amy.
Oh, no, no, no.
I
No,
know,
no,
but
no.
she's
That
a,
is
she's like an
ridiculous.